This time we're going to take a look at a fully spec'd out 15-inch MacBook Pro with the Touch Bar and Touch IDs. If you're not familiar with the Touch Bar, basically it's an OLED strip that replaces the function keys from the standard Apple keyboard. So as always, the 15-inch MacBook Pro is quite expensive. This time it starts off at $2399, but that gets you a quad-core Core i7 along with Radeon Pro dedicated graphics. You're also stuck to 16 gigs of RAM, but it is faster RAM at 2133 MHz. And of course, we get even faster PCIe-based SSD storage, and we're going to explore that when we compare them to the old model. So just like the 13-inch, the 15-inch is also thinner and lighter than the previous generation. In fact, it's a full half-pound lighter, which now measures at 4 pounds, which makes it a lot more portable, although it's still a pretty large laptop. Although the overall footprint is now much smaller and more compact than before. So when it comes to our display, once again, we have a resolution of 2880 by 1800 over 15.4 inches. That's good for 220 pixels per inch. Although these are the same specs as the previous panel, it is 67% brighter, and the display now supports the Cinema P3 standard for a wider color gamut. So colors are much more vibrant, and with that brighter display, we have deeper contrast, which gives you a lot more depth to the screen. And generally speaking, it looks a lot more vivid and definitely makes an impact. Now, something you might notice if you're an existing 15-inch MacBook Pro user is the fact that the new MacBook Pro has smaller text and smaller icons. Basically, everything has been scaled down. Once again, if you haven't heard, the backlit Apple logo has been sacrificed for this new display technology. I think that's a worthy trade-off, but of course it would be nice to have that signature feature retained. The new MacBook Pro looks a lot like a blown-up version of the MacBook. We have the same integrated hinge, which is milled out of the same one piece of aluminum that forms the top, which makes it look a lot neater than the previous model, which had a plastic strip here, which was part of the antenna system. Ventilation has been minimized, although you'll find ventilation hidden within the hinge of the MacBook Pro, which is now much smaller than the previous model. But unlike the baseline 13-inch MacBook Pro, we also get ventilation on the sides, which is especially important for a high-powered computer with a Core i7 processor and dedicated graphics. This is somewhat similar to the ventilation on the previous MacBook Pros, but it's a bit longer than the previous model, and the built-in fans are designed to be much quieter than previously. Of course, the big story with the MacBook Pro this year is the I/O. We've gone with all USB Type-C connectors, and on the 15-inch MacBook Pro, all 4 of them are full 40 gigs per second Thunderbolt 3 ports as well. And like all MacBook Pros, returning once again is a 720p FaceTime HD camera with an LED indicator and an ambient light sensor. Speaker quality has also been improved slightly. It's not quite as dramatic as we saw with the updated 13-inch MacBook Pro, but it definitely sounds a bit louder with a wider range. Now, the big news with this generation really is the Touch Bar, which is an OLED strip at the top of the keyboard replacing the function keys. The interesting thing about the new MacBook Pro is that the battery is much smaller. We go from 99.5 watt hours to 76. But Apple says it should deliver an average of 10 hours, which is an hour better than the previous model. Ultimately, there's a lot to like about the new 15-inch MacBook Pro. It's got a great design that's much more compact than before, which makes 15 inches a lot more manageable than it used to be. We have this fantastic new display, and we have that massive trackpad, which is very clever. And the Touch Bar definitely adds a new layer to the interface, which is genuinely useful if used right. And of course, this is something that will evolve over time as software and applications are updated to use it. And it's fantastic to finally have Touch ID for logging in and Apple Pay. So what do you guys think of the new 15-inch MacBook Pro? I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section below. And of course, I will have a 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar and Touch ID coming in shortly, so stay tuned for those videos. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next one.